Well, we are going back to the well. I never want to be lazy when it comes down to it, but parts of this video are going to be from an old video I made. When was that? All the way back in, I think it was like 3 years ago, 2022. That should not be 3 years ago. I'm sorry for reminding you, but where the possibility of a Fallout New Vegas sequel or Fallout New Vegas 2 was discussed. There are some updates that need to be added in here, but I want to talk about what was going on at the time, why I'm potentially worried about a follow-up to New Vegas, and how actually there have been some updates to this story. One element of this story was Chris Avellone, who is a key heart and soul writing department figurehead who mattered a lot when it came to Fallout New Vegas, who actually, I'm going to mention in this video, was accused of quite a few different things, filed a libel case against his accusers and won. Basically with the courts saying that he didn't do the awful things that were said that he did, that there was no proof of that, and that it was a load of baloney. That's basically what they said. And so you have Chris Avellone, who no longer works with Obsidian, essentially. He kind of works more like a free agent, third party kind of, thing. And also you have alongside that with Fallout New Vegas, you also have its inclusion in Fallout Season 2, the TV show, which, depending on how you feel about it, some people love it, some people don't, but regardless, that as well will kind of set up a limitation on what you can do with the story. So those are some things I did want to add into the beginning here, and I might add in some things throughout it, but I kind of want to cover what was going on at the time, 2022, what was happening, all of these talks, because this was on my other channel, Degenerate J, before I made JRPG, and some of my concerns about a potential follow-up if this ever does come to fruition. I do actually have a question of the day though today, which would be, what do you want to see out of Fallout going forward? Do you want to see any sequels to games like this? Would you want to see New Vegas return? Or are you in the boat of leave it alone, move to a different setting? Or are any of the concerns I bring up here concerns you share? Let me know. I would love to read that down below. Tiny backstory. Before my dad passed away of cancer a couple years ago, one of the games that we played together the most was Fallout New Vegas, and there's a reason for that. Fallout New Vegas has some of the best writing, hands down, in a video game. You know, I put it up there with games that people talk about, Planescape Torment, Knights of the Old Republic 2. The proposition of a sequel to Fallout New Vegas is something scary but really exciting to me. It is probably my favorite video game of all time. There are many people who contributed to that, and we're going to talk about them today too, but that leads us to the news from a giant bomb show, Grub Snacks, and this was where VentureBeat's Jeff Grubb actually talked about a possibility for a sequel to Fallout New Vegas. Now, this is something that I do want to say has been kind of brought up for a long time. There's been Obsidian interest in a Fallout New Vegas follow-up forever. Actually, back in 2013, Obsidian CEO Fergus Urquhart, I really hope I said his name right, I'm sorry if I didn't, but you'll never watch my tiny channel. He had actually talked about creating a sequel to New Vegas at that time, and he had talked about basically what they wanted to do. He said, oh, we'd love to do Fallout New Vegas 2, it would be awesome. I think of going from Fallout 1 to Fallout 2, we tried to associate the two areas somewhat closely. It wasn't just, oh, we're gonna do this 2,000 miles from here. So I think if we were to do Fallout New Vegas 2, or just a new Fallout, we would probably separate it from what the internal team at Bethesda is doing. I have some sources for this as well, including Video Games Chronicle and some other ones that I will link in the description down below. But one thing that's worth mentioning is that Microsoft did actually get Obsidian in 2018, and now they actually own Bethesda as well. So Microsoft essentially owns everybody involved with Fallout at this point, and Jeff Grubb did point out in his own, way, without confirming it, because this is behind the scenes insider information and it's early talks, that this is very early, but people have begun to have talks and say these words in sentences, and those words are Obsidian and New Vegas 2. We're talking years and years away. There's at least an interest and conversations happening about making something like that actually a reality. For me personally, now I'm talking about, me, Jay, this is something that I would love to see. Grubb did add that a lot of people at Microsoft think this could work, and there's a lot of interest to make it happen. Now, Chris Avellone is, I think, one of the best writers in gaming. He did some of the best writing I've ever seen. Literally, I looked through some of my favorite games, and at least 2 of them are partially they were made partially by Chris Avellone in the writing department. Those are Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2 and also Fallout New Vegas, which again has some of the same stuff. You know, the idea that maybe one person isn't in the right. Now, obviously in Fallout New Vegas, we know Caesar's Legion is pretty much in the wrong, but there are even things offered in the writing that actually support Caesar's Legion. Things like the fact that raiding and tribalism are basically gone in the Legion areas of the Midwest, you know? So they were able to create a world that felt alive, where there were evil people and there were better people that were trying to be good, but it wasn't exactly like a moral paragon where you had a Superman versus a Darkseid. Not insulting that, just saying it wasn't written that way. It was written in a way where everybody felt like they had problems and there were issues with the world that needed solving, and there were a lot of people trying to use you to get their ends, and you use people to get your ends as well. It was written very three-dimensionally for Fallout New Vegas in a way that really clicked with players, especially Fallout fans. You know, I love all the Fallout games. I even have fun on Fallout 76. I've said it before. I know some people are going to gasp and be in awe at that. I think that game has improved. In trying to make more content for this series, because I love it, I've been going back and playing some of these games, and New Vegas is so special for the reasons I said. You know, it's one of those games, like I said, I have a personal connection to. I played it all the time with my dad. We played through multiple different playthroughs. I've played hundreds of hours of it on console, and I've played probably close to the same amount on PC. I'd have to check my Steam. So it's one of those things that I'm worried about, though, with a follow-up because of the writing department. Last year, in 2021, Chris Avellone was Me Too'd or faced sexual allegations against some people, one of them who had previously dated him, to my understanding, and one of them who he said he had never met. This man had a track record of good behavior, of being an amazing writer, of being a personable person who had friends, who was sociable, and who did live his life relatively peacefully. Now, with this dude, though, the problem that I have is that he was one of the hearts and souls behind Fallout New Vegas, and he is no longer at Obsidian. You know, part of this also has to do with working freelance. Part of it has to do with just people distancing themselves from him in the gaming industry. You know, there were a lot of different developers that distanced themselves from him immediately when these claims came out, and not because there was any proof. Actually, Chris even filed a libel case against the people who actually gave this alleged proof or gave these allegations out. How are you going to follow it up without one of the hearts that made it what it was? You know, he talked about this as well. I can show some, I guess, a couple of screenshots for this. But he did talk about, when asked, would you work on it if asked, he did say, I won't get asked. Even if an additional mountain of evidence is presented against 2020's allegations, there will always be key people who will never believe the evidence staring them in the face, and that's why false allegations are so damaging. But Chris also said the other day that it's a good idea, but Bethesda never wanted to pursue it after New Vegas 1. So this was something that had been talked about, at least at some point, but Bethesda never actually asked them back. Now, in terms of my actual concerns, one of them would be the writing. Now, I already talked about Chris Avellone, but what I mean about this is how you're going to preserve player choice from the original game. And this is a reason I'm actually a little bit concerned about them bringing up Fallout New Vegas in Season 2 of the Fallout show, which is not out yet at the time of recording. Maybe it'll come out, it'll be like the best thing ever, and I'll be totally wrong. But in general, one thing I like about this is that it is left mostly open-ended. You know, it is left mostly canonically vague, where many different things could happen. I mean, the only ending I would probably think wouldn't happen is the Legion ending, because in general, Fallout doesn't typically pick the worst ending. Like, it usually picks good karma or something pretty neutral to be a canonical ending. But in general, when you pick a canonical ending, and you move on from that, you do cause some problems where you remove player agency and choice, which I would argue are two of the biggest things, or I should say one of the biggest things, around Fallout, especially New Vegas. This game was praised at the time and continues to be praised for its reputation system regarding different factions. Yeah, it can be sloppy a little bit when combined with the karma system, but in general, it was interesting to provide a way where different playthroughs could be a bit of a different story. They would follow certain similar beats, and there was a lot of cut content that would have made this idea even bigger, but in general, your playthrough, if you are a Caesar's Legion lapdog, is going to be very different than if you're sucking up to the NCR, is going to be pretty different than if you just hate both of them, you give them the finger, and you go the wild card route. You know, there are similar missions, and some of the missions actually play out a lot of the same ways, but I would argue that compared to other Fallout games, this one does a very good job of letting you pick your path, letting you pick what kind of character you want to be in that world, almost like a sandbox or a playground. And it's not just a sandbox or a playground in the sense of how you play, but also in the sense of how its story progresses. It did a very good job with that. So for me, I'm not saying Obsidian can't do it. I'm not saying other writers can't do it. But when I'm looking at where they are at now with Bethesda, you know, one, it would obviously have to be Obsidian, because I think Bethesda's writing is not at the same level with Fallout as this game was. I think this is the best written modern Fallout. But also, I do worry about some of the changed mechanics as well. You know, Fallout 4, for all of its positives that I do enjoy, and I know people will praise the shooting improvements, I personally thought that making it more of a shooter and less of a semi-turn-based RPG, you know, with the VAT system and things like that, yes, it makes it less clunky, right? But also, I feel like there are whole ways to play the game without engaging with VATs really at all. And to me, that doesn't really feel like a Fallout game. You know, there are ways to play that game as if it's Borderlands, or as if it's a weird RPG-esque Call of Duty. I feel like that doesn't feel like this era of Fallout. You know, at the very least, it doesn't feel like this era of Fallout. You can argue it's just as valid of Fallout. I mean, Fallout 3 and New Vegas are very different from Fallout 1 and 2. It's a fair argument, I actually think. But I do also think as well that with this, you do run the risk of changing everything and essentially making the world feel so different that it only is New Vegas 2 in name. I worry about how far the gameplay has changed, essentially. Like, even if you put aside the writing, how much has the gameplay changed in Fallout to the point where this is going to be an entirely different beast? It's not going to feel like playing Fallout New Vegas if it just feels like Fallout 4. And again, I know someone can point to, well, Fallout New Vegas just feels like improved Fallout 3. Sure, but to me, that was part of the charm of that era of Fallout. So if you're following that up directly in the same setting, in the same region, dealing with this, you know, some of the same factions, I'm sure, I just wonder how you're going to do that. Not just from a writing standpoint, but also from the standpoint of gameplay itself. I'm not saying it's impossible, but Fallout New Vegas is one of those special games that I think is very difficult to replicate, and I feel like a lot of gamers have less patience nowadays. They've expected Fallout to be something else. Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 was a huge jumping on point that era for a lot of people following the TV show. So, you know, now you're going to have this want to appeal to that wider market, which could actually hurt what the games were. I don't know. I don't want to gatekeep it, but I also don't want Fallout to have to change just because a bunch of people who were never fans of it in the first place showed up right now. You know, that's kind of where it is. You can become a fan of Fallout, but I don't want the games to change because of that boost of numbers. And with how corporate some of these companies have gotten too, that is another concern for me that I do feel is valid. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this redo or remaster / remake of a video I made a long time ago. Part of it was from that, part of it was new. I'm sure you'll be able to tell in the audio as well, but I did want to say thank you for watching. I appreciate you very much. If you enjoyed this video, you want to leave a like, subscribe, Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below and support our channels. That means the world to me. We are playing through lots of games over on Degenerate Plays, which is one of our other channels, which is linked down below. And I also did want to say that our sale for cosmobunny.shop has been slightly extended by a few days. So if you want to use code SALE or follow the link right here, we make coasters, keychains, trays, and more out of recycled paper from damaged comics, manga, magazines, and more, giving art a new life transformatively through a new medium, and recycling the rest of that paper goes to help support our channels, and we appreciate you very much, and we appreciate those of you who have ordered during the sale. Following the link will actually let you order directly with that discount code already applied if you follow that sale link, unless the time has already passed and you watch this in the future, in which case you could use code DJAY123 for 10% off your order. We always do that. So have a fantastic day, and as always, everyone, stay shui.